I never believed in signs from the universe until a rusty wrench saved my marriage, led me to my true calling, and taught me that sometimes the biggest miracles come disguised as the smallest coincidences. My name is Marcus. I'm 52 years old, and 3 years ago I was a broken man convinced that life had already dealt me my final hand. I was wrong about everything. Picture this. It's 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm standing in my garage, staring at my hands. These weathered, oil-stained hands that had been fixing cars for 28 years. The fluorescent light above me is flickering, casting these weird shadows that made everything look like a black and white movie. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt truly alive. My wife, Sarah, hadn't spoken to me in 3 days. Not because we'd fought, but because we'd simply stopped. You know that feeling when you're living with someone, but you're both ghosts in your own house? That was us. She'd wake up, make her coffee, kiss my forehead like she was kissing a stranger, and leave for her job at the hospital. I'd grunt something that resembled "have a good day" and disappear into my garage until dinner. Our son, Jake, was 19, away at college, calling less and less. When he did call, I could hear the distance in his voice, not just the miles between Cleveland and Austin, but the emotional distance that had been growing for years. I'd become the kind of father who provided but didn't connect, the kind of husband who was present but not really there. That Tuesday morning, I looked at my reflection in the chrome bumper of a '98 Camaro I was working on, and I saw a man I didn't recognize. When did I become so empty? When did my eyes lose that spark? I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but somewhere between paying mortgages and fixing transmissions, I'd forgotten who Marcus Thompson actually was. The breaking point came when Mrs. Chen, my neighbor, knocked on my garage door around noon. She was this tiny 75-year-old woman with the biggest smile you've ever seen, always tending to her garden and humming these old Chinese songs. She handed me a cup of tea, jasmine, I think, and said something that hit me like a sledgehammer. "Marcus, honey, you look like a man who's forgotten how to dream." I almost laughed. Dream? At 52, I'd been dreaming about retirement, about my back not hurting, about getting through another day without major drama. But Mrs. Chen wasn't talking about those kinds of dreams. She was talking about the dreams that make your heart race, the ones that make you jump out of bed in the morning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what she'd said. I wandered into my garage around 2 a.m., just sitting there among the tools and car parts, and I started crying. Not the quiet, dignified crying you see in movies, the ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that come from a place so deep you didn't even know it existed. I cried for the dreams I'd abandoned, for the distance between me and Sarah, for the son who barely knew me, for the man I used to be who believed in magic and possibility and the idea that life could surprise you in beautiful ways. The next morning, Sarah found me asleep on the garage floor, still in yesterday's clothes. Instead of being angry, she sat down next to me and said, "We need to talk, don't we?" That conversation changed everything. We talked for 4 hours, really talked, for the first time in years. She told me she'd been feeling the same emptiness, the same sense that we were just going through the motions. She'd been thinking about separation, not because she didn't love me, but because she couldn't remember why she did. "I miss the Marcus who used to tell me about his crazy ideas," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "The one who believed anything was possible." That's when she pulled out a book she'd been reading, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. She'd been exploring this stuff for months, trying to understand why she felt so stuck, so disconnected from the life she thought she wanted. "I know it sounds crazy," she said, "but what if the way we think about our lives is actually creating them? What if we've been unconsciously choosing this emptiness?" I was skeptical. I'm a mechanic. I deal with things that are broken and need fixing. You don't think positive thoughts at a busted transmission. You get your hands dirty and fix it. But something about the way she said it, the hope in her eyes that I hadn't seen in years, made me willing to listen. Sarah started sharing what she'd been learning. She talked about how our thoughts create our reality, how we're constantly sending out vibrations that attract experiences that match our inner state. She explained that the universe responds to our dominant thoughts and feelings like a giant echo chamber. "Look at us, Marcus," she said. "We've been thinking about how stuck we are, how empty we feel, how disconnected we are, and what have we been creating? More of the same." She showed me passages from various books, Neville Goddard talking about the power of imagination, Wallace Wattles explaining how to think in a certain way, Louise Hay discussing how our thoughts create our experiences. At first it all seemed too simple, too good to be true. But then she said something that stopped me cold. What if instead of focusing on what's wrong, we started imagining what could be right? That night I tried something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I let myself dream. Not about winning the lottery or becoming famous, but about small, real things. I imagined Sarah and me laughing together again. I pictured Jake calling me because he wanted to talk, not because he felt obligated. I visualized myself waking up excited about the day ahead. It felt ridiculous at first. Here I was, a 52-year-old man lying in bed, eyes closed, pretending my life could be different. But as I kept doing it, something started to shift. The images became more vivid, more real. I could feel the emotions of those imagined moments, the joy, the connection, the sense of purpose. Sarah and I started a morning routine. Every day at 6 a.m. before the world woke up, we'd sit together in our kitchen and do what we called possibility thinking. We'd visualize our day going well, see ourselves connecting with each other and with the people we'd encounter. We'd feel grateful for things we wanted as if they'd already happened. I'll be honest, it felt weird at first. I kept waiting for Sarah to admit this was all nonsense. But something interesting started happening. Small things began to change. The guy at the hardware store who'd been grumpy for the 5 years I'd been going there started smiling and making conversation. My back pain, which had been constant for years, started easing up. Jake called one evening just to tell me about his day. Were these coincidences? Maybe. But they were the kind of coincidences that make you pay attention. I started reading more about this stuff myself, not just the popular books, but the deeper teachings. I learned about the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza and how our thoughts literally rewire our brains. I discovered Bashar's teachings about following your highest excitement. I dove into Napoleon Hill's principles of success and how our definiteness of purpose shapes our reality. But the real breakthrough came when I started applying these principles to my work. I'd been running Thompson's auto repair for 15 years, and it had become just another job. I was good at what I did, but there was no passion, no vision beyond paying the bills. But as I started thinking differently about my life, I began to see my garage differently too. One morning, while visualizing my day, I had this clear image of my garage, not just as a place where I fixed cars, but as a place where I helped people. I saw myself not just as a mechanic, but as someone who solved problems, who made people's lives easier, who created value in the world. I started treating each customer like they were bringing me an opportunity to practice excellence. Instead of just fixing their cars, I began really listening to them, understanding their needs, going above and beyond. I started seeing patterns, elderly customers who needed someone to explain things clearly, young parents who needed reliable transportation they could trust, students who needed affordable solutions. The energy in my garage started to shift. Customers began bringing their friends. Word spread that Thompson's wasn't just a repair shop. It was a place where you were treated with respect and care. But the real magic happened on a Thursday afternoon in October. I was working on a Honda Civic, and I dropped my favorite wrench. This old Craftsman wrench my dad had given me when I was 16. It rolled under the car and into the storm drain outside my garage. I was devastated. That wrench had been with me for over 30 years. It was the first tool I'd ever owned, and it had this perfect weight and balance that made every job feel easier. I spent an hour trying to fish it out, but it was gone. That evening, feeling defeated, I called Jake to tell him about losing Grandpa's wrench. We ended up talking for 2 hours about memory, about the things that connect us to our past, about what really matters in life. It was the deepest conversation we'd had in years. "Dad," he said, "maybe losing that wrench was meant to make us have this conversation." The next morning, I was walking to my garage when I saw something glinting in Mrs. Chen's garden. She was kneeling there, smiling, holding up my wrench. "I found this in my flower bed this morning," she said. "Isn't it funny how things travel?" I stared at that wrench, trying to figure out how it had gotten from the storm drain to her garden, which was uphill from my garage. "Mrs. Chen just winked and said, 'The universe has a sense of humor, doesn't it?'" That moment changed something fundamental in me. I realized that what I'd been calling coincidences weren't coincidences at all. They were responses. The universe was responding to my new way of thinking, my new way of being. I decided to test this understanding. I started visualizing my garage not just as a successful business, but as a place that served my community in a bigger way. I imagined teaching young people about mechanics, about the satisfaction of working with your hands, about the pride that comes from fixing something that's broken. Within a month, a guidance counselor from the local high school stopped by. She'd heard about my work and wanted to know if I'd be interested in mentoring students who were struggling academically but had an aptitude for hands-on work. "It's funny," she said. "I've been thinking about this idea for months, but I kept driving past your garage and getting this strong feeling that I should stop and talk to you." That's how Thompson's Auto Repair became Thompson's Learning Garage. We started a program where high school students could come after school to learn basic automotive skills. But what they really learned was confidence, problem solving, and the belief that they could create value in the world with their hands and their minds. Sarah started helping too, using her nursing background to teach the kids about safety and first aid. We became a team again, working towards something bigger than ourselves. The changes kept expanding. Jake transferred to a school in Ohio to be closer to home and started helping with the youth program during his breaks. The kid who'd barely spoken to me for years became my partner in creating something meaningful. "You're different, Dad," he told me one evening as we were closing up the garage. "You're like, awake now." Local business owners started reaching out, wanting to create similar programs in their fields. We connected with a local carpenter, a chef, and an electrician, creating a network of mentors for kids who learned better with their hands than with textbooks. The local newspaper did a story about our program. Then a regional magazine picked it up. Before I knew it, I was getting calls from people in other cities wanting to start similar programs. Me, the guy who couldn't remember the last time he felt alive, was inspiring others to create change in their communities. But the most profound change was in my relationship with Sarah. We weren't just married anymore. We were partners in creating something beautiful. We'd rediscovered not just our love for each other, but our shared sense of purpose. As I look back now, I understand that the law of attraction isn't just about thinking positive thoughts and waiting for good things to happen. It's about aligning your thoughts, emotions, and actions with the version of yourself that you want to become. When I was stuck in that cycle of emptiness and routine, I was unconsciously attracting more of the same. My thoughts were focused on what wasn't working. My emotions were flat and disconnected, and my actions were just going through the motions. But when I started imagining a different reality and feeling the emotions of that reality, everything began to shift. I wasn't just thinking differently, I was becoming different. And as I changed, The world around me changed too. The universe doesn't respond to our wishes, it responds to our vibration. When I was vibrating at the frequency of emptiness and resignation, that's what I experienced. When I started vibrating at the frequency of possibility and purpose, that's what I attracted. 3 years later, Thompson's Learning Garage has graduated over 200 students. 60% of them have gone on to careers in skilled trades, and many of them stay in touch, sharing their successes and challenges. Sarah and I have been married 26 years, and we're more in love now than we were when we were young and thought we knew everything. Jake is finishing his degree in education and wants to expand our program to other states. He's become not just my son, but my friend and collaborator. We talk almost every day, and he regularly asks for my advice on things that matter. But the real miracle isn't the external success, it's the internal transformation. I wake up every morning excited about the day ahead. I see opportunities where I used to see obstacles. I feel connected to something larger than myself. Mrs. Chen, who's now 78, still brings me tea and wisdom in equal measure. She told me recently, "Marcus, you remember how to dream now. But more than that, you remember how to believe." The tools and techniques I've learned have become part of my daily life. I start each morning with gratitude, visualizing the day ahead with positive expectation. I practice what Joe Dispenza calls elevated emotions, feeling joy, appreciation, and enthusiasm regardless of external circumstances. I've learned to trust the process, to follow the synchronicities, to act on inspiration when it comes. But I've also learned that this isn't about perfection. There are still days when I feel stuck, when the old patterns try to reassert themselves. The difference is that now I recognize these moments as temporary weather patterns rather than permanent conditions. I have tools to shift my state, to reconnect with my vision, to remember who I'm choosing to become. Last month, I got a letter from a young woman named Maria who'd been in our first group of students. She's now a certified automotive technician, but more importantly, she's starting a similar program for young women interested in the trades. "Mr. Thompson," she wrote, "you taught me that fixing things isn't just about having the right tools. It's about believing that everything can be made better. I want to teach other girls that they can fix anything, including their own lives." That letter sits on my desk now, a reminder that when we transform ourselves, we give others permission to transform too. The changes we make ripple out in ways we might never fully understand. Sarah and I have started talking about our next chapter. We're dreaming about expanding the program, maybe writing a book about our journey, possibly traveling to share our story with other communities. At 55 and 52, we're planning like we're just getting started, because in many ways, we are. Here's what I've learned about the law of attraction that nobody talks about in the simplified versions. It's not about manipulating the universe to give you what you want. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts the experiences that align with your highest good. When I was focused on what was wrong with my life, I was unconsciously creating more of what was wrong. When I started focusing on what could be right, I began attracting opportunities to make it right. But the real magic happens in the space between visualization and manifestation. It's in the daily choice to maintain your vision, even when external circumstances haven't changed yet. It's in the courage to act on inspired ideas even when they don't make logical sense. It's in the willingness to become the person your dreams require you to be. The universe is always responding to who you're being, not just what you're wanting. When I was being a man who'd given up on his dreams, that's the reality I experienced. When I started being a man who believed in possibility, everything shifted. If you're listening to this story feeling stuck, feeling like life has already dealt you your final hand, I want you to know something. It's never too late to wake up. It's never too late to dream. It's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. The tools are simple, but they're not always easy. Start with gratitude for what you have. Visualize what you want with the emotions of already having it. Take inspired action when opportunities present themselves. Trust the process even when you can't see the whole staircase. But most importantly, remember that you're not trying to change your life. You're trying to change yourself. And when you change yourself, your life changes automatically. The universe is conspiring to help you, but you have to meet it halfway. You have to be willing to let go of who you've been to become who you're meant to be. That rusty wrench that started this whole journey, I still have it. It sits on my workbench, not just as a tool, but as a reminder that sometimes the smallest synchronicities can lead to the biggest transformations. Every morning when I pick it up, I remember that moment when I realized the universe has a sense of humor, a sense of timing, and a sense of purpose that's bigger than my understanding. I remember that we're all connected, all part of a larger story that's still being written. Your story isn't over. The best chapters might still be ahead of you. All you have to do is believe in yourself, in the process, in the incredible possibility that life can surprise you in the most beautiful ways. The universe is listening. The question is, what are you telling it? If this story touched something in you, if you felt that spark of recognition that your dreams aren't dead but just sleeping, I want you to do something right now. Take a moment to imagine one thing, just one thing, that would make your life feel more alive, more connected, more meaningful. Don't worry about how it could happen. Don't get caught up in the logistics or the obstacles. Just feel what it would be like to have that thing in your life. Feel the emotions of it. Let yourself believe, even for just a moment, that it's possible. Then comment below and share just 2 words. I believe, because that's where every transformation begins, with the willingness to believe that life can be different, that we can be different, that the universe is ready to surprise us in the most beautiful ways. And if this story reminded you that it's never too late to wake up, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about real people discovering their power to create their reality. Because every story of transformation gives someone else permission to transform too. Remember, the universe is always listening. Make sure you're telling it a story worth hearing.